I thought I was done, but I wasn't. I never know when I'm done until like something inside me says I'm done, and I was done. But I said emerges, and I guess, because of certain between like some modern philosophy and information theory, right? And there's always, now this is very interesting. There's always this discrepancy between like the fourth thing and the fifth thing. Is there an ether or not, right? So in physics, people talk about ether, which is supposedly been discredited. Well, it depends what we mean by ether. My understanding these days is that the ether is a mental grid. Mental means mind. Mind means monad. Monad means soul. It means it's a-dimensional, which means it's non-dimensional, which means it doesn't have a spatial component but is yet the underlay. That's a hard that's a hard position to wrap your mind around, right? And my understanding thus far, and it may evolve, but my understanding thus far is that emergence, as it's used, I wouldn't even say popularly, but popular scientifically, is when something greater comes from something lesser. When these subcomponents combine in a certain way, something else that wasn't there before emerges. Right? So, in that sense, philosophically, I'm against the word emergence. But etymologically, it actually works quite well. From a merger, from a marriage, right? But it depends what we mean by marriage. Because that marriage, merger, because it depends on what we mean between by that difference. What is that difference? What is that difference between the sexes? I'll leave that aside. But emergence tends philosophically to be background independent, which is a specific term in physics, a specific term in the philosophy of science. Emergence tends to be associated with background independence, which is generally associated with relativism. Which is generally associated with like relativistic space, relative relativistic space time, kind of. I'm still working on it, but that seems to be the trend. So when I'm speaking philosophically, I actually prefer the word expression. I'm searching for the right word. I haven't found it in the literature. Um, the word that I'm looking for. So a lot of times I use the word expression. But like linguistically, I like the word emergence, or etymologically, I like the word emergence because it's from a merger, which is related to reconciliation. Because if you think of emergence as like these things that don't have a certain property, these things that don't have a certain property come together and combine and create something that wasn't, that's emergence. That's the sum is great, the sum is greater, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts type of thing. Which somehow means that addition and multiplication don't add up. But emergence linguistically or etymologically can very easily, from a merger, from a reconciliation, from a concordance. Then what you're talking about is that which was split comes together. And then all of a sudden it's that which was lesser is more. Growth. And that I'm deeply in love with. It's beautiful. Love it. So it's hard to talk. The Tower of Babel doesn't exist just between languages. It exists within a language. And it depends deeply on the choices that we make. And it depends deeply on our philosophical backing. Our own backbone. I'll be the... We could have a physical backbone. A physical, right? There's the physical backbone. You could have a physical backbone like this, yet have a philosophical backbone like this. Straight up. Right? Paul Abdul style. Now, that's a different type of straight up. Depends what you mean by straight up, because where's up in this fucking spiral? Dance, motion. What was it, Hawkins? Hawkins couldn't move a muscle, but he had the physics, he had physics in his mind like blam. Paul Abdul, I don't know if she can do physics. I'm thinking not. Or at least if she can, she ain't telling. But she got that physics down, right? Who's more true? Are they tied for first place? Are they tied for second place? What if your backbone's like this? What if you're Cairo, Praktik, Cairo, Egypt, Cairo, Istanbul, Constantinople? What if you're straight as shit and you're up like this? So that dealt with what I wanted to say about emergence. I feel like there were a few other things I went off on so many directions and so many tangents I never got anywhere. But yet I'm speaking around. It's hard to talk about a three-dimensional blob in a straight line. Tell a computer what a bird is. Tell a computer what an octopus is. I don't mean model it, I mean like type it. Because like a lot of these modeling systems that we use, yeah, it's all ones and zeros, but we're not typing in ones and zeros. It's like there's this system built on top of this system, built on top of this system, built on top of this system, that kind of gets us, yeah, really quite close. But like if you're just a dude just typing ones and zeros, do that and describe a octopus as you, a person, with ones and zeros or words, and then make one. Not so easy. It's like yeah, Jordan Peterson said one time when he was talking about like rat research. If you think rats aren't complex, try to build one, or something like that. I'm paraphrasing, right? If you think rats aren't complex, try to build one. And that's one of the problems with like animal testing and so on. And that's also one of the problems with like medicine and so on. Like I would, if I had to be stranded on a I mean statistically, if I had if someone asked me like you're going to be stranded on a desert island with a vet or a doctor, I'd choose a vet because they have to understand biology more globally. They have to understand the whole fucking bag, especially vertebrates. Or a chiropractor, or an acupuncturist, right? There's all these different ways of looking at everything. What if we could put it all together? And what if we were all self-interested enough on an individual level to self-educate ourselves? It's kind of like, I remember in Game of Thrones there was a character who knew 19 languages. Right? Based on the other things I've said, like, yeah, there are bodies, people, individuals, aliens in disguise, archangels, among us who know every fucking language. But then imagine being so interested. What if every bit of entertainment, what if every video game, every board game, every book, every audio book, what if everything was built toward, and it is. And the problem isn't so much the world as it is our own individual decisions and our own individual choices. And I don't mean that in like a shake your finger type of way. I just mean like our will, our free will, our limited free will is powerful, and our accumulated limited free will is what will make the difference. And the problems in the world are to a large part because of our hands which is the true meaning of the word man. You're a man if you have one of these. It doesn't matter how big it is. Chipmunks are pretty fucking close. Gerbils, a lot of rodents are very close to being men. A man. What we call human. People haven't redefined that word yet. The sad thing about, like, there's a man and a woman, and I guess the reinterpretation of that is that a man and a woman are both men. It's not that the woman is built on the man. Now, I agree that that's how it's been in history, but we also have to understand that the word woman is a recent invention of the Enlightenment, the Renaissance. You'll see. It's a distinction because the woman has a womb. Because woman pulls life out of nothing. Because there was half-life, because where there was sublife, because where there was the potential of life, life in its infinite spiral came. That's a distinction of honor. The W-O, never mind how that relates symbolically back to mathematics. And how it will express itself even more symbolically in mathematics as time goes on, because the W is the omega. And the O is the alpha. It's actually a very beautiful, artistic distinction to have that W-O before the man. What it means is you're pulling God from God. You're pulling God from the prison of eternity into the expression of a quality of the equation, a dynamic equation, to solve a problem that exists in the world that is yet unequal, as eternity is yet unequal. God is the Alpha and the Omega. So that which definitively answers the question I am. You can't just say I am and you're I am. I am is that which resolves perfectly in the real world and eternity. That's I am. That's God. Man or woman, big or small, that's the answer. That persists, that will continue to persist. And when all this shit goes away, in eternity, all of those things that completed that equation here are there. Sorry I'm being like that. I haven't completed it. I have not completed the equation. At least not temporally. So I guess my counterpoint would be like, yeah, you're right, the words are wrong, but there are simpler ways to fix them. And I would ask those who are concerned about this issue on any side of the argument, look more into etymology. And if you understand the argument and you understand the importance of etymology and philology, especially philology, and the power of philology. Almost no one talks about philology. Incredibly useful. More scientific than a lot of things that are called science. People talk about obviously, yeah, linguistics, so on and so forth, but like to a certain extent, like linguistics are tied up in Bertrand Russell logic, which is great and smart, but wrong. Math is not built on logic. Everything's built on geometry. Dynamic geometry. Which is another word for mechanical geometry. But it might not be mechanical in the way we think of it. That's why dynamic might be a better distinction, because then you're dealing with like force vectors. Never mind the fact that everything's spiral. Everything's spiral. And straight lines are a special case of a curve. A curve with an infinite radius, all that kind of thing. And one of the good things about some of the fallacies of now is that more people are looking into these things. But we have to step it up. Collectively. And some of us have to be willing to raise our voice before we're perfect, even perhaps at the expense of ourselves, for the sake of the whole. I don't want to get to a heaven where the people I love aren't. If the people I love aren't there, I don't want to go. What I didn't get to in another video, because I didn't have enough time, is the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And that's usually said to say, like, oh, be careful. Don't have too many, don't be too idealistic. But it depends what we mean by idealistic. Because what we call idealistic is oftentimes just full-blown indoctrinated into not idealism. And I hate to say this, because it's a cheap blow, but it's also very true. Like, if you can't speak at all to root 2, unless you as a person have like a deep moral authority, and a lot of people do. So I guess that's and you can sense it, you can feel it. Like, some people have a deep moral authority. So if you're, I guess what I'd say is, if you're attracted to a deep intellectual who can't speak at all to root 2, and can't speak at all to like background dependence and background independence, like whether or not there's an ether, like if you can't, if you can't speak to whether or not there's an ether in any capacity, and you can't speak in any capacity to root 2, or if you don't have like a clear, obvious, like moral authority, which sometimes just comes through. It comes through. No one hates Dick Gregory. It's impossible. Like, if you can't speak to those things, then like, I don't know. What can you speak to? I don't know. Then again, I also need to recognize my own hypocrisy in saying that, and that I'm sitting here drinking, smoking. I don't understand enough about chemistry or biology, about history. I don't understand enough about like contemporary events, about other people's lives, about the hurt, the want, the desire. But what I can speak to definitively is that there's enough evidence that we live in a butcherous world and we need not. And there are those who have figured out how to not live butcherously. And I understand that respiration, now granted, whole CO2 thing aside, that respiration between plants and people is nonviolent. And there are ways to have digestive processes between plants and animals that are also nonviolent. And I understand that the Galapagos Islands is the missing link between evolution and Abrahamism, the Bible, Old Testament, New Testament, Quran. That's the missing link. Never mind the other religions, and especially, I've been getting into Sikhs lately. There's some good Sikh, Sikhism. There's some good videos on that. Karma, quantum entanglement, end of story. Like, you don't even need to fucking know anything else as far as like unified spiritual theory. You don't need to know anything else. Karma, quantum entanglement. What they call Platonic thought forms. Which is a problem and another reason to discount Plato. Or discount the preeminence of Plato. Plato, as corrected by Aristotle, as interpreted through Iamblichus, as demonstrated through Saint Agnes. Homerically. It's kind of a nice way to think about it. Have a good day. I hope to learn more and be a better person. I want to contribute and help save the world. And that's not naive, that's innocent and beautiful. And we'd all do a lot better to recognize that type of innocence in each other. Even the people who do the wrong things, which is everybody, to a degree. Wants things to be better. Not every day. You wouldn't still be here if you couldn't make the world a better place. That's truth, man. We can do this. Have a good day.